This is The Guardian.
Hello and welcome to The Guardian Football Weekly. Panic over, staple that St George's cross to your face. England are good and are going to win the World Cup. They made a tricky trip to Serbia on a shagpile rug, looked simple. Morgan Rogers looked great in the 10. Madueke and Gordon were direct out wide, and Elliott Anderson had another good game at the base of midfield. England played quick and direct and looked like they had a plan. Elsewhere, Ireland lose to 105th ranked in the world, Armenia. It's a disastrous defeat. Scotland win in an echoey empty stadium in Belarus. There's a huge late win for Italy, and Norway score 11. Brackets, write 11 in letters, close brackets. Meanwhile, Nuno out and in at Forest. Did the Marinakis blind trusting mean that he didn't see any Spurs games in the Premier League last season? We'll discuss Nuno's legacy and celebrate the fact that Postecoglu is back. There's worrying news for Baz, some classic email vasectomy wedding hits, your questions, and that's today's Guardian Football Weekly. On the panel today, John Brewin, welcome.
Hello, Max Rushden.
Hello, Nicky Bandini.
Hello, Max Rushden.
And when I said worrying news, it's nothing to actually worry about. But I don't want you to be on edge for the podcast.
Well, I'm already on edge. It's too late.
Well, on edge after the Ireland performance, but we'll get to that. Let's start in Serbia then. Serbia 0, England 5. Charlie says, where should England's victory parade start next summer? Yeah, Dave says, where's the World Cup final being held? And should us England fans book flights now? And Homer's Choice says, given how much the pod overreacts to poor performances by England, are you going to overreact to this good performance? I mean, John, it was, in a way, Tuchel's first real test in a competitive game. Serbia hadn't lost at home for 2 years. They hadn't conceded in qualifying until this game. Morgan Rogers, Anthony Gordon, Livramento all started. They all played well. In fact, England were just good. It was fun. It was quick. I enjoyed myself.
England played English football as we've seen it. And it's taken a while under Thomas Tuchel. Actually, hasn't had that long, but there's been an impatience about him, hasn't there? Particularly after Andorra, which was a grind for all of us, let's be fair. We move on, and the sense is that they're playing, in Serbia, they're playing a purportedly better opponent, and England were able to raise their levels and play very, very well. And Thomas Tuchel, as a manager, is well used to English football. Was successful in English football. Foreign appointments we've had previously. Sven-Göran Eriksson hadn't coached in English football. Fabio Capello tried to make England play like an Italian team. Tuchel, having been in the Premier League, realises what the best facets of an England team are and is trying to implement that. He's slightly hamstrung by the fact that the England team that we've had for the last few years is probably a bit over the top, and he's having to find new players, but he's been pretty successful in that. Madueke's been a success. Elliott Anderson's been a success. I was just looking, actually, at where the World Cup final is held. It's at the MetLife Stadium in New Jersey, and I was thinking where the post-match celebrations could be held. And, of course, Bada Bing from The Sopranos, surely the England team should be hiring that out for the World Cup final celebrations. Obviously.
And if it goes wrong, Mark Bullingham just takes Thomas Tuchel out on a boat ride just for no reason. And Thomas goes, it's time.
Fancy a boat ride, Tom? Yeah.
It's good you're here, Nicky. I mean, it's always good you're here, obviously. But as a panellist who doesn't get carried away for good or bad, where are you? And I know you obviously have, Italy are probably the team that you would will to win the World Cup the most. But watching this England performance, how carried away would you get?
Yeah, it was really funny this last night because I actually watched it with some friends I've got visiting, and two Americans and one Canadian. And one of the Americans is more of a football fan or a soccer fan, and was fairly understanding of everything that's going on. The other two, not so much football fans. And I was trying to brief them a bit and saying, listen, this might not be the finest example of football I could have shown you, right? This is the game I need to watch, but it's perhaps going to be a bit boring. It's perhaps going to be a bit stiff because this England team, they're not really playing this exciting flowing football. And then they went and played some really good football. And I was like, oh, actually, that was quite a better example of football than I was hoping to or expecting to be able to give you. But I don't know. I think the problem with international football specifically is none of it is really equivalent to the bit that matters. The bit that matters for England is quarterfinals, semi-finals, final of a knockout tournament. In those games, you're going to play the 2 or 3 teams in the world at any given moment who are capable of winning that tournament, right? There's going to be a very small section of teams that could win this World Cup. And I think that England are in that group. And I would have said that before this game. I do think there are things you take from this that feel really, really encouraging. And there are concrete things like Elliott Anderson, because it feels like Elliott Anderson offers something different in that midfield role, something that perhaps plays really well for Declan Rice, partly because there's just always been that feeling with Rice that he feels when he feels more free to push on, he shows the best of himself. But I also thought that Anderson was just this brilliantly English directness and straightforwardness with the ball, always moving it forwards, always taking it forwards, that I think felt like the start of an identity maybe as well. I really feel like in very little time at all, I'm looking at him and thinking he has to be part of this. He has to be starting, because I think he's brings a character to the team that it didn't have before. And I think certainly when you look at the second goal, how neatly it came together, that was the sort of football I imagine that Tuchel wants this team to deliver. And I think there was some really, really good stuff. And some of it isn't surprising. I think the depth of this England group has never been surprising. If I was to wave any flag of concern, it would be that actually, even at the Euros, we were talking about sometimes, but would it be better even if Harry Kane wasn't starting and Watkins was starting? Sometimes the depth can be a problem. And looking at how well England played this game, I'm like, well, is there some suggestion that maybe some of the players who we've assumed are definite starters shouldn't be assumed as definite starters, because this group behind them can really do things? But come on, they won 5-0. It was brilliant. I thought this was a really, really impressive England performance. And I'm trying to do, because you want me to, Max, you want me to be that voice of reason.
No, you don't have to be. Go wild.
But I do think it was really impressive, way above what I was expecting last night.
Yeah. And the interesting thing about Anderson, actually, Barry, is it's not like he's sitting in a role where someone goes, well, doesn't really matter how well you play. Someone else, as Nicky alluded to, the interesting questions are about Morgan Rogers was brilliant, but we presume Jude Bellingham plays there. Madueke was brilliant, and we presume Saka plays there. Part of me would like Tuchel to give these guys the shirt next time and have Saka and Bellingham on the bench if they're available, to say, these guys have earned the right to keep those shirts.
Yeah, he could do that, but he would get pelters from the media, one imagines. I don't think he particularly cares what the media make of him. He seems to have quite a fractious relationship with them, as most England managers do. Just, I would take exception to the fact that we overreact when England lose, as one correspondent suggested. As someone who has sat here with my jaw on the floor while various colleagues and other people in the media have lavished Gareth Southgate with excessive praise for throwing away assorted semi-finals and finals over the years. But anyway, that's in the past.
Yeah, it doesn't mean you won't keep bringing it up, though. It doesn't.
Oh no, it's all I've got. I mean, John.
Bringing up the past is I don't know. Bringing up the past feels like a lot.
Yeah, it's all I've got. It's all
to me. Yeah.
But yeah, certainly those players. If you get the shirt and you don't do anything wrong, I'm an advocate that you should get to keep it until you don't deserve it anymore. But if you're bringing in Elliott Anderson and starting him, and he has been superb over these 2 games, admittedly against poor opposition, who are you leaving out?
Well, I suppose that's the point with Anderson. You're not really leaving anyone out, because it's sort of Adam Wharton who hasn't get in there yet. But you're leaving out Bellingham, and you're leaving out Saka if you play Madueke and Rogers.
Yeah, I'm a big Wharton fan, but I certainly can't fault anything Anderson has done over these 2 games. He's made a case. Quite a few players have had a very good window, this international window, and the players who left out or who weren't there because they were injured will be looking on going, ooh, they'll be a bit worried, I'd say. And that's good.
Yeah, it is. And actually, we mentioned that, you want to make those players hungry. Rashford came on and looked so much hungrier and better yesterday, perhaps because Anthony Gordon had a brilliant game out there on the left.
I hated his penalty. I hated it so much. Even at 4-0, I hated that penalty. But yeah, I mean, he did come on and put in a sharp cameo. I think Baz has just alluded to it, and I do think probably needs to be said that Serbia were a disappointment as the team that everyone was looking at and going, "Oh, this is the tough game in the group. This is
I think that's generous. I think that's generous, Nicky.
It was not surprising what they did, right? I mean, 5-4-1 and everything very, very squeezed together until they had that chance, any chance they had to stretch the pitch. You did see in position they tried, but there just wasn't that much there. And I suppose that didn't come as a huge surprise when you looked at the team sheet. Perhaps you look at the team sheet and think, well, there's a couple of players at centre back who I think are good players, Milenkovic and Pavlovic. I've long not been the biggest enthusiast of Dusan Vlahovic from what I've seen at Juventus, so I didn't feel like on the times they did come forward, I didn't think they were going to provide such a terrifying threat, and they didn't. It does need to be acknowledged that England in this group are absolutely in a different category of team to all the other teams in there with them. They haven't got a second team in this group who you would look at and think could go to the World Cup and challenge, and that's where England should expect to be. But it's not easy to break down teams that do that, that do 5-4-1 like that, and that's where I come back to Anderson just bringing that. It was the speed at which things happened. It was the speed at which those balls were played out of midfield. It was a very clear plan. It looked like early in the game to try to make space down the right. You had Madueke sometimes holding his position and staying a bit deeper, which was bringing Birmancevic up the pitch, and that was making space for Reece James or sometimes Morgan Rogers to go into. It felt like there was a plan for breaking down a team that was going to sit deep like that, and I thought that was one of the things that was really encouraging, and one of the things that felt like a little Thomas Tuchel stamp on the situation, that he hadn't come in here not knowing what he wanted from this England team. Yes, Serbia didn't offer much, but you still have to break those teams down, and it seemed like there was a plan for doing that.
It's interesting you mentioned Jude Bellingham. In recent weeks, we've heard a bit about the Bellingham camp. We've heard a bit about Jude Bellingham. Obviously, he's out at the moment. He's having that shoulder operation, or had that shoulder operation.
Yeah, sorry, just to jump in, John. Listeners might not have seen that. I think it was Ollie Holt in the Mail.
Yes, okay.
A piece about his dad sort of having an influence or something.
Yeah, his father, Mark Bellingham, had a run-in with the sporting director at Borussia Dortmund, Sebastian Kehl, over his son being substituted at half-time. That's the other son. Ollie Holt, a fine journalist, a schoolmate of mine, no less.
You Etonians are everywhere, John.
Yeah. Ollie wrote a piece talking about how the Bellingham family, rather overbearing. The father was one of these dads, like your Richard Williams, your Earl Woods, that type of figure. Jude Bellingham hasn't convinced there's a few people that are not convinced by Jude Bellingham for England. He's done some spectacular things. We've discussed this many times, Max. Making him compete for his place, how would that go? That's the interesting aspect to this. Adam Wharton and Elliott Anderson, where you can probably, that's one of those good headaches to have, the great cliche. Mm-hmm. But this is where Tuchel's man management, and he is a good man manager, this is where it comes into play. What does he do with Bellingham when you've got a player like Morgan Rogers, who seems to fit so well into the system, or Eze could play that role as well? Cole Palmer. Yeah, I mean, Phil Foden. This guy is, booking for the Bahamas next summer or whatever at the moment. So the Bellingham question is a huge one that he's going to have to answer. Now, whether we can refer that back to his father or not, that's a separate issue. But Morgan Rogers, you can't really drop him, as Barry said, on those performances. He's such an intelligent player, and we talk about between the lines. And he links play between the lines in a way that, I'm sorry, we haven't seen Jude Bellingham do enough of that.
And actually, the hard thing about breaking down a team, Barry, is that final pass, the bit of skill that Rogers did to set Madueke away, is the thing that we've been desperate to see, that we didn't see at all against Andorra. And they can come off or they can't, right? But it did come off. Roy Keane compared him, without getting carried away, to Gaza yesterday. I think it's so fascinating what Tuchel does in that 10 spot now.
It is, yeah, and he doesn't have a huge amount of time to decide what it is he wants to do. But England last night were everything they weren't against Andorra, which sort of cements my theory that they have a mental block against these teams they're told will be hard to break down. Because last night they were intense, ruthless, quick. Really quick, showing a turn of foot and pace that they didn't against Andorra. And everyone seemed to be on the same wavelength, and that's really important. So why would you want to scupper that just by crowbarring in someone who might not be on the same wavelength as everyone else?
And actually, Nicky, defensively, we haven't really talked about. They haven't conceded yet. And okay, you mentioned the opposition aren't amazing, but that is still something. They did concede against Senegal, didn't they, in that friendly? And we talked on Monday about what the back four would be, but actually adding Livramento, adding Concert, when Jed Spence came on as well, there's so much speed in that back four now, and they did look incredibly solid.
Yeah, it's a pretty nice day, isn't it, when you keep a clean sheet and both your centre backs score as well.
Yeah.
Constant Gay, I think, looked really, really comfortable, and it is, unfortunately, it's repetitive to say it, but it is difficult to know how much to take from a game where your opponent is offering so little going forward. But I do think there's a lot to be said for partnerships, and there's a lot to be said for players who get used to playing together and build that confidence and relationship together. And that's another of those questions, isn't it? What happens for John Stones if he's coming back? Tuchel's spoken very positively about him. Is he someone who's going to be guaranteed that chance to return and be a starter? I think it's going to be one of the questions that Tuchel has to think about. But in terms of this game, nothing but encouraging signs from that group, definitely.
Yeah. And I wonder, John, there's something interesting about if your England team, if the players play for Aston Villa and Crystal Palace and Nottingham Forest, as opposed to Real Madrid and Liverpool and Man City, that you judge them, but you sort of go in going, our centre-backs are Villa and Palace. That's not elite, but probably doesn't matter if it works.
It's funny, before the game, I was sent a list, the team list, and the clubs they play for, and we were laughing at it. It was like a sort of team list that you get in the late 80s, early 90s. Yeah. It was like a Graham Taylor selection. It's like, should the Aston Villa set? Because we have become used to this dominance of players from Manchester United, Liverpool, Chelsea, Arsenal, whatever, Manchester City. The Premier League's the premium league in the world. These players are high quality. Someone like Mark Guehi would be a Liverpool player if things had gone slightly differently.
Of course.
But a lot of those players would be. I mean, Morgan Rogers was a Manchester City player. It's like the trickle down from the clubs at the top. There was another good thing where I saw Harry Kane give a little speech after. Have you seen this? Talking about how he'd obviously been at Tottenham when Jed Spence arrived and knew the journey that he'd been on to get there. And he said he was almost tearful to see how far he'd come from the player that arrived at Tottenham, which you forget that Harry Kane, is fairly implacable in public, but I think he's quite a leader. There's quite a power behind the throne now.
We're going to win the World Cup, John.
It's so exciting.
It's so good, isn't it? Yeah, well, look, well done to Jed Spence and everyone. How exciting. The open-top bus. I can just see it. We'll be in New York, Barry, apparently. This is the plan. We could be there, Barry. You could be there to celebrate England's World Cup win. Don't worry, you'll probably have the last laugh. You have before. Anyway, that'll do for part one. Part two, we'll begin, I'm afraid, Barry, with the Republic of Ireland's disastrous performance in Armenia. Welcome to part two of the Guardian Football Weekly. David writes, Dear Max, Barry and producer Joel, I'm a huge fan of the pod. Came to it by a sort of happy coincidence when Max joined in August 2017 after having a bit of time on my hands following a very unexpected and fairly dramatic cardiac arrest. On the 11th of August, shortly after watching Arsenal 4, Leicester 3 on TV in the first match of the season. I'm a Spurs fan, but I don't think it was connected. Anyway, I recovered well, started listening to Football Weekly during my time off work. Haven't missed an episode since, blimey. I also think I've attended pretty much every live show in London during this time. I'm, of course, coming to the Troxy on Thursday and really looking forward to it. I'm emailing us hoping to be able to put Max at ease regarding filling the top tier, as he seems quite anxious about it. I was there a few days ago, the 5th of September, to see the brilliant synth pop band Hot Chip. It was a great show, but It was clear looking up from the floor that the top tier was very sparsely populated and far from full. It didn't detract at all from the show, and if a band with 6 top 20 albums aren't filling it, then a podcast with 1 top 20 book, shouldn't feel bad. Although admittedly by the second half of the Hot Chip show, the floor of the Troxy was a throbbing, pulsating mass of bodies writhing around ecstatically. So your halftime show and Wilson's anecdotes will have to go some to match that, but I have every confidence in you all. Thank you all for giving us such consistently terrific show. All the best, David. If we sell a top tier, Barry, will you writhe? Will you pulsate?
I'm always writhing and pulsating, Max. I can only think of one Hot Chip hit, and it's a very good one. Yeah, I was going to say I reckon Brewin is a fan.
Well, I wouldn't say a fan, but I have seen him live and they were really, really good. Yeah, you know.
Yeah. Fortunately, that gig has gone, so you can't go to that. But you can go to Football Weekly on Thursday. We'll all be there, as well as Jonathan Wilson, Johnny Lou. Jordan's going to come down. Paul Watson's going to come down as well. And it's live streamed around the world. So, and you can watch it a week on Catch Up, theguardian.com/Football Weekly Live. There's some good bits. We've done some actual planning. And we'll tell Barry about that a half an hour before the show begins.
I am slightly concerned about the fact that I am not privy to any of these plans, which suggests that...
It's not a stitch up. You're not being stitched up.
I'm being stitched up.
Yeah, although I think if we said, and Barry's going to get massively stitched up, I think we would fill the top tier. So maybe we should say that. theguardian.com/Football Weekly Live. Come along, please. Right. Armenia 2, Ireland 1. After that great comeback against Hungary. I mean, I watched Shay Given and Kevin Doyle on RTE after the game. Kevin Doyle looked bereft. Shay Given said it was probably one of the worst results in our history, and then listed the sort of 5 worst results.
There's been a few.
Yeah. Kevin Doyle said, we've had a Macedonia here. And actually, they both said, look, 2-1 defeat flattered Ireland, Barry.
It did. Caoimhín Kelleher had a very busy night in the Ireland goal and had to keep the score down. I noticed on Blue Sky, The Athletic described this as a shock defeat. And I have to say, I wasn't surprised. It certainly wasn't a shock. Maybe a little bit of a surprise about how bad the Ireland performance was, but I wasn't surprised that we lost because it was exactly the kind of rake I expected Ireland to step on Sideshow Bob style and get slapped in the face with the handle, and they duly went and did it. We lost 2-1. They had a goal disallowed. And as I said, Caoimhín Kelleher was probably the busiest man on the pitch. Ireland were absolutely dreadful. They started reasonably well, created a few chances. But as is now customary under Heimer Helgrimsson, they went behind and give them every match they go into, they give themselves a mountain to climb. So they were 2-0 down, pulled a goal back. But it wasn't enough. And Armenia were delighted to win, should have won by more. I don't think a huge number of Ireland fans were surprised. There are murmurings, well, not particularly loud cause. I was looking at the Irish media this morning saying maybe the time is up for Heimer Helgrimsson, but I really don't know where Ireland go from here because he can't be sending his team out to defend that badly. Nathan Collins had another mare last night. He's one of the most experienced players on the team. He's ever present for Brentford, but for whatever reason, he's had 2 shockers in this window. Matt Doherty, another senior player, he had a shocker on Saturday, was it? And he was dropped for this game. The FAI, who are largely to blame for this mess, they don't have the money to employ anyone better than Heimer Helgrimsson. He asked for a psychologist. They said, no, we can't afford one. This is where we are. And I look at the players that can't get in the England squad, and I'm thinking, crikey, if we had even like 2 or 3 of them, we'd be brilliant. But Ireland football is very much in the doldrums, and I was disappointed with this result, but I wasn't surprised by it. If we beat Portugal home and away, we'll be fine.
I mean, but that's the thing, the expanded World Cup, it made you think, teams like Ireland, that sort of size nation should have a much better chance. But it feels feels miles away, John. Feels like they're and I suppose the question that we've had with the other home nations is, are the players, do they have enough good players? Because sometimes you go, look, you just sometimes don't have a generation. But as Barry's alluded to, there's some experience there. Armenia are behind Kurdistan.
It was awful. Barry's described that. We talked before about Thomas Tuchel talking, about bringing back English football. Jaime's talked about bringing Irish football, playing to Ireland's strengths. Now, we've laughed and joked about this. What are those? The corner, the throw, the knockdown from Quinny to Robbie Keane or whoever. Ireland's use of corners and free kicks was absolutely abominable. The long throw. Rory Delap, Irishman, basically patented the long throw. Jake O'Brien is not Rory Delap. Good Lord above. Like, the throw is just not... the throw's got to be a trajectory that it is there to be headed at, not this sort of looping...
It's got to be flat.
It's got to be a flat trajectory, that's right, yeah. Barry's correct in the fact that appointing Jaime Hallgrimsson, it was a surprise. Funny enough, I was told he was going to be appointed by someone, a source, should I say, told me this, and I forwarded this information to my Irish friends, and they were like, what? Who? And within, the news came out half an hour later or whatever, and it was like, wow, what? Why? And obviously, he has a pedigree with Iceland, of course, but he has turned up and just thought, this is how we're going to have to do it. The problem is the players that aren't doing the jobs that he's picked them. As Barry says, Nathan Collins, he is one of the most inconsistent players, I think, in football. He can look absolutely calm, assured, really good at bringing out the ball. He scored a great goal against Ukraine a few years ago. He's a classy player. And then he can have a performance like that. Although Darragh O'Shea was just as bad in the game, it was a disastrous performance, and nobody came out of it with any credit for Ireland, apart from the goalkeeper, as Barry said. I'm sorry to pile on Ireland. It was awful. I would like Ireland to be at the World Cup. Remember them in the USA back in '94? They lit up the tournament, despite some of the games being... I mentioned this before. Ireland, Norway, if you really want to watch a bad game of football... that Egil Olsen versus Jack Charlton.
Football's made for that.
Listen, I am an advocate of get it launched, but good Lord above, that is just football on a level of. But that would be amusing because they would turn up and try and play that football. That's what Jaime's trying to do, and it's not going to work, sadly.
I don't want to sound like I'm picking on Nathan Collins because they, as John said, they were all garbage apart from Kevin Kelleher, but he is supposed to be the calming influence, the steady hand on the tiller, and
the captain.
It just wasn't happening for him at all.
Yeah, I think I said Armenia ranked above Kurdistan. I meant to say Kyrgyzstan, if I pronounced that correctly. I need Paul
I've
Watson
made that mistake in print, so don't worry about that.
Yeah, Kurdistan is a roughly defined geocultural region in West Asia. Who would probably also beat Ireland, even though they don't have a team. Belarus 0, Scotland 2. It was an empty stadium in Hungary because of Belarus's support for Russia's invasion of Ukraine. It felt, Barry, very COVID-y, didn't it? When you strip football back without the crowd, it does just sound like a Sunday league game. And so you just can't tell. Scotland looked good, actually, in the highlights that I saw.
Yeah, they were decent, totally dominant, won comfortably, very comfortable 2-0. But yeah, you can hear the players shouting at each other. You can hear the instructions coming from the touchline. There was one stage John McGinn was stomping up the wing, and you could hear his footsteps off the turf. The kind of game Scotland have lost in the past, shall we say. So I wasn't massively confident that they would beat Belarus. But they did very, very comfortably. And because Denmark beat Greece, hammered them in Athens, which I think people weren't expecting, given their performance against Scotland earlier in this break, it leaves that group wide open. So it's been a very good window for Scotland, 4 points to joint top. And with Denmark, Greece a point behind. I think quite a few Scottish fans went to this, but they weren't allowed into the stadium. And I know the Italy-Israel game, which we'll get to, was also played behind closed doors. And there seemed, there's a few hundred at that. They were the fans that turned up seemed to be allowed in. But what I don't understand is this game was played behind closed doors on a neutral venue through no fault of Scotland. So why aren't they allowed to have a crowd in there? I don't get it. It seems unfair.
They find goals hard to come by, don't they? A Scottish goal. And I was looking at the top Scottish goal scorers of all time are still Kenny Dalglish and Dennis Law.
No Ali?
No, but Coisty's like the last good striker they had. It's just something's not happening there. I mean, Che Adams has got 10 goals for Scotland. He's a good player actually at championship level. It's not a bad player, Che Adams. Actually, he's playing in Italy now, of course. But he's
no Dennis Law, right? I mean, we say
it's not Dennis Law. He's not Kenny Dalglish. You're right. And they played fewer internationals. Actually, Kenny played over 100. But it's like if Scotland had a goal scorer, we might have seen him at more championships, is what I'm saying.
It's interesting that with just with reference to Ireland, because Evan Ferguson did get the one goal for them. I know they weren't good, but he's had a really encouraging start so far at Roma. So perhaps one little bright light for Ireland in what was apparently, I didn't see that game unfortunately, but apparently not.
Oh no, don't! It wasn't unfortunate.
don't show that to your American and Canadian.
You dodged the bullet.
Yeah, exactly. And one more game to watch before we do Italy's win against Israel. Norway beat Moldova 11-1. Is that a table tennis score? Is that a squash score? We have asked Lars to do a 1-minute voice note going through every goal, if he could.
So, what have we learned? Norway good, Moldova bad. First goal, tap in from Felix Hornmüller from a Holland assist. Second goal, Moldova lose possession in their own box, neat finish by Holland. Third goal, Ødegaard through ball for a trademark Holland left-footed finish. Fourth goal, deeper through ball from Ødegaard to Holland this time. Fifth goal, ball drops for Ødegaard in the box. Sixth goal, cross for Holland to head in from the edge of the 6-yard box. Seventh goal, blocked shot drops for Thelo Osgaard in the box. Consolation goal for Moldova, Leo Ødegaard puts a back pass into his own net for some reason. Eighth goal, a saved Holland header drops for Osgaard in the box. Ninth goal, Oscar Bob wins a penalty and Osgaard converts. 10th goal, a powerful shot from Holland after a cross. And the 11th goal, Holland heads across goal for Thelo Osgaard to convert again. So Holland in the mood, clearly. Moldova very bad at all the things. They even had a player who came on who was named Dross, which seems a little bit on the nose. And Thelo Osgaard with 4 goals, all kind of poachers' efforts. But there we go. Norway good, Moldova bad.
I did try and find some highlights, but it's one of those where I could only get someone's mobile phone footage of it. Anyway, Thelo Osgaard came off the bench and scored 4, but he didn't score as many as Erling Haaland, who scored 5. Anyway, 11-1. But there are, of course, no easy games in international football. Let's talk about Italy. They needed a win against Israel, and they got it in a mad game, Nicky. They were 4-2 up with 4 minutes left. Then it was 4-4, and then Sandro Tonali wins it in injury time.
Yeah, so obviously this is the start. Well, they played with Estonia a few days ago and beat them 5-0, but this is the first window of the Gennaro Gattuso time in charge, and pretty inevitable, I think, to reach for that famous Gattuso press conference. Sometimes maybe good, sometimes maybe shit. Yes,
I say that a lot about things.
It was absolutely that in microcosm, because on the one hand, in these 2 games, Italy have scored 10 goals, which is quite something actually when you look at recent history and all the concern there's been about the attack. And it does feel like Gattuso has come in. He's gone straight to this front 2 of Retegui and Moise Kean, which I really like. And even in this game, there was some great stuff. I mean, actually, across these 2 games, Retegui had 2 backheel assists. There was some real swagger. Moise Kean playing with real swagger as well for the national team. Some really nice goals. But my God, were they awful at the back. They scored 2 own goals in this game and had another one punched into his own net by Donnarumma that was disallowed. A goal down, then 2-1 down against Israel, came back to lead 4-2 in the second half and blew that as well, to go to 4-4 and then won it in injury time. It was a bonkers game of football, extremely entertaining game of football, but my goodness, not the sort of game that makes you think this team is about to catch up to Norway in the group, because of course Norway already beat Italy 3-0, haven't dropped any of the games. So when Gattuso was appointed, one of the discussions was, can Italy catch up to Norway on goal difference? Well, after Norway thumped Moldova 11-1, I'd say that's probably out of the window. But if nothing else, I suppose Italy have made it look a bit more certain that they will at least be heading to a playoff for a World Cup spot. Unfortunately, those haven't gone so well in the last 8 years, have they? So, last 2 cycles.
Yeah, so look, Norway have 15 points. They won all their games. Italy have 9 points from 4 games. Israel have 9 points from 5 games. Estonia and Moldova out of the running. Barry, you wanted to talk about Israel's participation in these qualifiers and if they qualify for the World Cup.
Well, I don't think they should be participating in these qualifiers. Russia are suspended from the competition because of their illegal invasion of Ukraine. And I think Israel should be suspended as well, because under Benjamin Netanyahu and his IDF, they're committing acts of genocide in Gaza. And I'm aware other opinions are available. They're not opinions I share. But I fail to see how Russia can be suspended and Israel aren't. And see also Belarus, who Scotland beat. And I don't think that's a controversial opinion, but it probably will be. And I'll be accused of all sorts of things I'm really not. But I don't think it's controversial to say that Israel shouldn't be in these qualifiers.
I agree with Barry on the points he makes about Netanyahu and the IDF, absolutely. But the thing is, this decision is made by UEFA. If you look at it, Belarus played Scotland. Belarus are an ally of Russia in the Ukraine war. They're not banned. UEFA would probably let Russia back in if they could. They're a pretty slack organisation, I think. The reason there is a great debate, isn't there, over the fact that Israel are in the UEFA region to start with, because if they're in the Asian Confederation, you would imagine they'd have been kicked out many years ago. It's one of those complicated things of world football governance. I think a few people would be absolutely delighted that Italy won that game and that Israel are unlikely to be at the World Cup, because that would cause all types of trouble.
This is what Alexander Shefferin told Politico. He said, regards Israel, first of all, what's happening with civilians there is personally hurting, killing me. He said, from the other point of view, I'm not a supporter of banning the athletes, because what can an athlete do to their government to stop the war? It's very, very hard. Now, the ban for Russian teams is, I think, 3.5 years. Did the war in Ukraine stop? It didn't. Regarding FIFA, their General Secretary Matthias Grafstrom addressed the 75th Congress, said the work of the Governance, Audits and Compliance Committee and the work of the Disciplinary Committee remains ongoing. This is regards Palestine, FA calling for Israel to be banned. They are, quote, working diligently to conclude what is clearly a highly complex topic. Critics of them accuse them of just kicking the can down the road, because that's not the first time they've said we've had a meeting to have a meeting to have a meeting. The Palestinian FA have said the number of footballers killed or died from starvation has reached 421, including 103 children. According to the PFA, 288 sports facilities have been damaged or reduced to rubble across Gaza and the West Bank, from stadiums and training grounds to gyms and clubhouses. The vast majority, 268, were in Gaza, 20 were in the West Bank, with about half serving football directly. And latest reports are that more than 60,000 people have been killed in Gaza as a result of Israeli actions there. Anyway, as Barry said, other views are available. I'm sure we'll get some interesting feedback on that. But I share your views, Barry. Anyway, that'll do for part 2. Part 3, we'll begin with, as we all predicted, Ange Postecoglou being the manager of Nottingham Forest on the 10th of September, 2025. Welcome to part 3 of the Guardian Football Weekly. Rigobert says, can we get a voice note from Johnny Lew about how happy he is to have Ange back managing in the Premier League? Jamie says, why can't we Forest fans have nice things? Elwood, how many goals will Forest concede this season? Yes, Nottingham Forest released their announcement at 1 a.m, which is when you normally release these kind of pieces.
It was 12:15.
Oh, was it 12:15? My apologies. Nuno Espirito Santo sacked by Forest. Ange Postecoglou hired. Forest statement thanked Nuno for his contribution during a very successful era at the City Ground. said he would always hold a special place in their journey. It's been very public about his relationship with Evangelos Marinakis that has deteriorated over the summer, and disagreements with Edu, the new sporting director, as well. He took over in December 2023, kept Forest up. Last season took them to 7th, their highest finish since 94-95, qualified for Europe for the first time in 30 years. Built a team, John, on defensive solidity, quick on the break, but very hard to break down. Here comes Ange Postecoglou. I mean, if you're not a Nottingham Forest fan, it's all very exciting. If you are, it's agony, right?
It could be golden, yeah. First thing, Milenkovic, judging by last night in a high Ange line, mate, is going to be quite amusing. Murillo alongside him as well. We're going to have to. This is the fun that Ange is going to bring back to the Premier League. Talking of Evangelos Marinakis, not afraid of slaying sacred cows, is he really? Steve Cooper, idolised by Nottingham Forest fans. Goodbye, Steve. Nuno, beloved. You know, this charming man. He completely won over the public.
He's sort of the best manager they've had since Clough, right? Is that who else is there? Billy Davis did well. I don't know.
I think people would say Steve Cooper getting after so long was such a real achievement, and you know the love for him is still there. It's one of those inside football, inside baseball things, isn't it? That it's a lot of it's to do with agents. You know, Edu is an acolyte of Kirja Rabchin. Nuno is, of course, the first ever client of George Mendes. Which means he'll probably be okay for getting a job soon, you know. The shift to Edu meant a shift in essentially the agencies that deal with Evangelos Marinakis. That's where the heart of the quarrel between Nuno and Edu, and that's where, and such is the way these days that the chairman, the president, actually, as I've noticed, Ange Postecoglou calls him, which he did call him over the summer. The president makes the decision to stick with the sporting director rather than the manager. So therefore we have Ange. I'm not quite in Johnny's camp with Ange, but he did get so baited, so angry, so miserable towards the end of his time at Tottenham. Has he had long enough off to be restored to the sunny Lou Carpenter guy we saw 2 or 3 years ago? Or are we going to get this sort of slightly morose, miserable, defensive Ange? The last 8 or 9 months of that Spurs reign, I mean, all right, he won a trophy, all that. It was pretty tough going. If you ever went to the press conferences, pretty tense. And, you know, and we knew this guy wanted to kick back and whittle some, but it just won't happen to him.
Yeah, I mean, I suppose you can't, I probably can't dismiss winning a trophy and all that for Tottenham. I think Tottenham fans know for sure that, well, that's true, but Tottenham fans know that Forest will come to White Hart Lane, I think it's quite late in the season, and absolutely play them off the park, absolute Ange ball, and hammer them. I don't know. What do you? I've just checked Billy Davis Nottingham Forest record. Good. Yes, I shouldn't have mentioned that. You know, that was really plucking a name out of the sky. Please delete from the record. My apologies. Nicky, what do you make of this whole situation?
I mean, definitely fascinated to see which trophy that Forest are going to win next season, because as Ange told us with great delight in the spring, he always wins in his second season, so they're on for something, aren't they? But
the championship?
Maybe. I mean, it just feels so absolutely extraordinary, doesn't it, when you look at what Nuno achieved, taking over a team that was 17th. I think they'd won, 1 in 13 games before he took over, kept them up that season, and then takes them to, in the end, the Europa League, but for such a long time last season, being in the Champions League fight, and that jump in such a short space of time. We think about the players that he brought on and made better in his time in charge. I mean, we were raving this podcast. Well, I've been raving about Elliott Anderson this podcast, and I think about, that's part Nuno, isn't it? That's part of the job that he did and the work he did. And there was this extraordinary photo after the Serbia-England game of Morgan Gibbs-White and Elliott Anderson and Nikola Milenkovic all outside the locker room in a little huddle, and you think, well, pretty obvious what they're talking about. So it does feel pretty, I don't know, to me it feels damning of the club that they've allowed the situation to unfold this way, that you had a manager who'd done such a brilliant job to, I don't know if slip away from you is the right way, but be thrown away so quickly because of going out to get a sporting director without thinking about how that was all going to work together. Clearly, Marinakis is his own man who's not afraid to take his own decisions. I think that's probably about the most neutral way you could put it. There's certainly some strong feelings about him, aren't there? And I think this is not going to soften any of those. But I don't know. I think it feels like it's going to be an atmosphere that becomes very toxic very quickly if Ange isn't able to walk in there and start winning right away because of all the goodwill that the fans have. And I think clearly some of the players as well have for Nuno.
It's interesting, you mentioned Milenkovic there, John, but like Chris Wood has been huge for Forest. But he's, Ange likes a centre forward that can run 25 kilometres and chase down every single, and that's not Chris Wood's game at all, right? It's interesting. I mean, the midfield I think could kind of work, right? Gibbs White and Anderson and
Gibbs White can certainly press, can't he? Yeah, he's very good at it. Ange has inherited a squad that is not custom designed to his needs. I suppose the one thing is that Nuno managed to change that squad and fit it to. It's a real test of Ange as a manager. Now, the difference in between those two is Nuno is a pragmatic enough manager to make the adjustments it's needed and get the best from the players. Ange has one style of play, and that's what he wants to do. It doesn't really make much sense apart from the sort of, I don't know, who knows who in football, really, doesn't it? I mean, he's an Australian Greek manager going to work for a Greek billionaire. And that's interesting. Fair enough. I don't have any issue with that. But I think some of the Forest fans might do. The thing is, what you've got to do at Forest is a club where the fans are, if you go to the City Ground, it's a great atmosphere. Forest fans are inherent to what Forest are about. They're not one of these clubs that's, it can exist off its foreign following or anything like that. It's about the collective of the club. And those fans have got to be on your side because the City Ground has got to be a fearsome place to go. So Ange has got to do some severe PR work, is what I'm saying.
Yeah. And he's good at that. He is good at that.
Yeah.
And I think, he did change for the Europa League, right? Like Tottenham Man United, they absolutely parked the bus.
Well, that was Nuno football almost. Maybe he just plays his Europa League style.
It's possible, yeah. And he's not an idiot. Like he's been successful everywhere, Ange, right? He's not an idiot. But it will be absolutely fascinating to see how it works out. Timmy says, prayers for Baz. This is your worrying news, Barry. As it's been reported in the last couple of days that Lucas Fabianski is back at the London Stadium, set to start talks to re-sign as the third choice keeper. You thought you were safe, but you're not, I'm afraid. This is from Andy, says, hi Football Weekly, long-time listener, first-time writer and all that. Having been lucky enough to have a daughter via IVF 3 years ago, my wife and I have made the decision that one child is enough for us. Why would you want more? Oh, Andy, that's a good question. Anyway, on Wednesday, I shall be joining the select band of Football Weekly brethren undergoing a vasectomy while listening to Barry's smooth tones to help keep me calm. My plan is to hold back on Monday's pod, as I imagine you'll do one on Wednesday after the England game, which will be too late to listen to during the procedure. The downside of this means I won't be able to come to the live show this week as I'll be bedbound for a few days. It does mean I'll be primed to join the billions around the globe in watching the live stream with ice packed down my underwear and hoping I can get to a show in the not too distant future. Look forward to it, Andy.
I was wondering, Max, is part of the fact that you've not told Barry, maybe I'm spoiling a surprise here, is that he's going to have a live vasectomy?
I'll tell you what, John, I don't need a vasectomy to avoid having children.
That'll fill the top tier, won't it?
I find abstinence works for me, involuntary abstinence. All I'm hearing from Andy are excuses. We've got a whole top tier. We could... he could come along pushing his swollen gonads in a wheelbarrow. We can arrange a chairlift of some sort for him, and he can have the whole top tier to himself. He can sit in one chair with his swollen plums hanging over the arm in the next one.
Anyway, on that note, it seems like a nice time to end it, doesn't it? Thanks, everybody. Thank you, John.
Thank you, Max. Thank you for having me.
Thanks, Nicky.
Thanks.
Cheers, Barry.
Yeah, and he will, of course, have to buy 2 tickets if that's
one for each plum.
Yeah. 3 tickets. Football Weekly is produced by Joel Grove. Our executive producer is Danielle Stevens. We'll be back tomorrow.
This is The Guardian.